The Imagawa army, led by Imagawa Yoshimoto, entered Owari territory in the summer of 1560 with unshakable confidence. With over 25,000 soldiers under his command, Yoshimoto viewed the province as a minor obstacle in his march towards Kyoto, where he wanted to consolidate his grip on the Ashigawa shogunate. His army's numerical superiority and invincible reputation nourished the conviction that the campaign would be a swift and decisive victory. The Imagawa troops pushed forward with discipline and order, certain that overwhelming force would be enough to subdue any resistance. Yoshimoto's plan was straightforward: capture strategic castles along the way, eliminate any local opposition, and cement control of Owari before proceeding to Kyoto. As far as Yoshimoto was concerned, Oda Nobunaga, the leader of Owari, would be nothing more than a mere footnote in the history that would be written about him, an irrelevant opponent compared to the sheer power of the Imagawa. The first steps of the campaign reflected this exaggerated confidence. The Imagawa quickly captured some small border castles, meeting scant resistance. This seeming ease reinforced the belief that Nobunaga's defeat was inevitable. The morale of the Imagawa troops was high, and Yoshimoto, reveling in these initial victories, set up his main camp in Okehazama, a low and relatively isolated region bordered by hills and valleys. While the Imagawa were feasting on their initial conquest, Nobunaga and his vassals were watching carefully. In fact, Nobunaga's ostensible inactivity was a calculated maneuver. He understood that a direct confrontation would be fatal for his army, given the numerical differences, but he also knew that Yoshimoto's exaggerated confidence offered a vulnerability to be exploited. The difference in numbers between both armies was overwhelming. With around 3,000 soldiers, Nobunaga could not dream of holding his own against the might of the Imagawa in a conventional battle. According to the military doctrine of the time, when faced with a superior force, the defender had to withdraw to a fortified position and wait for the enemy, with the walls as an advantage. But Nobunaga was not an orthodox leader. Whereas his advisors advised the protection of strategic castles, he prepared a plan that few would dare to consider: an attack. Even as the Imagawa established themselves in Okehazama, his troops began to relax. Victory looked so certain that the commanders failed to take precautions against surprise attacks. Banquets were held, and the army acted as if the battle had already been won. This carelessness would prove fatal, as Nobunaga was about to do the impossible. Nobunaga understood that only a daring step could change the course of the battle. He made the decision to launch a surprise attack on the Imagawa's main camp, a risky move that would demand speed, precision, and the highest degree of secrecy. Nobunaga relied on crucial information obtained by his spies, who had identified the exact position of Yoshimoto's camp and the enemy army's vulnerable points. Fortune also worked in Nobunaga's favor. As he was preparing his troops, a strong storm hit the Okehazama region. Nobunaga soon realized that the storm could be his ally, disguising the movements of his forces and bewildering the Imagawa army. Beneath the cover of rain and darkness, he personally led his men through valleys and forests, stealthily using the rugged terrain to conceal their approach. The assault was orchestrated with precision. As Nobunaga's troops emerged from hiding, confusion gripped the Imagawa camp. At first, the Imagawa High Command believed that the turmoil was the result of a fight between different divisions of their army, which delayed the reaction to the surprise attack. Completely caught off guard, the enemy soldiers, many of whom were still distracted by banquets and celebrations, found themselves powerless to react in a coherent manner. Nobunaga charged with ruthless ferocity, focusing on destabilizing Yoshimoto's command center. Imagawa Yoshimoto, initially at a loss to grasp the gravity of the situation, tried to mount a resistance in the ensuing chaos. Together with his personal guards, Yoshimoto believed that the turmoil would be brought under control quickly, and, donning his ornate armor, strode confidently into the camp. Yet, he soon found himself surrounded by the relentless advance of Nobunaga's troops. Distraught by the confusion and the storm that reduced visibility, Yoshimoto was attacked by enemy soldiers who stormed the command center. He initially tried to fight back, wielding his sword and standing his ground as a leader, but ended up being knocked down by a series of swift and fatal blows. This leader, who had marched so boldly towards Owari, was now lying on the muddy soil of Okehazama, a victim of his own arrogance and Nobunaga's genius. Yoshimoto's death brought the Imagawa camp to a complete collapse. Stripped of clear leadership, the troops panicked and fled in all directions, deserting their weapons and supplies. Many of Imagawa's allies, sensing the inevitable defeat, deserted or surrendered to Nobunaga's forces. The rout was so disorganized that a large part of the army simply disappeared in the ensuing chaos. The Battle of Okehazama was a brilliant display of Oda Nobunaga's military genius. With crushing numerical inferiority, he changed the rules of combat by turning a seemingly impossible situation into an absolute triumph. His magisterial use of espionage, terrain, and weather conditions not only confused the enemy, but also showed his capacity to think beyond the conventions of the time. Nobunaga challenged military orthodoxy with a bold surprise attack, executed with ruthless precision. His capacity to rally his men, regardless of how uneven the odds were, proved his unparalleled charisma and leadership. He sensed that Yoshimoto's overconfidence was a shortcoming and tapped into it with scathing effectiveness. The result was a victory that not only wiped out a powerful rival, but also declared to Japan that a new kind of leader had emerged, a strategist combining boldness and intelligence with an unwavering resolve to shape the nation's destiny. His victory at Okehazama not only eliminated the Oda clan's greatest rival, but also cemented their control over Owari province. Nobunaga used his prestige to draw support from vassals who had been reluctant to follow him. He generously rewarded warriors who distinguished themselves in battle, building loyalty among his men and creating a solid foundation for the Oda clan. The victory also resonated on a national level, raising Nobunaga from a regional leader to a respected figure throughout Japan. Many daimyo started to recognize him as a brilliant strategist, capable of overcoming and overwhelming odds with his daring and intelligence. This growing reputation drew in new allies and opened the door to diplomatic alliances that further strengthened his position. On the domestic front, Nobunaga seized the moment to reorganize his administration. He changed inefficient leaders for loyal vassals and introduced reforms to strengthen governance in Owari. These steps ensured stability and equipped the Oda clan for the upcoming challenges of the expansion campaigns. As the Imagawa clan collapsed, Tokugawa Ieyasu, who had served as the vassal of the Imagawa, was presented with a fantastic opportunity to regain his clan's independence. Immediately, Ieyasu, stationed in Mikawa, began to consolidate his control over the province. Far from the shadow of Yoshimoto, he succeeded in rallying his vassals and proclaiming the autonomy of the Matsudaira clan, which would later be renamed the Tokugawa clan. Ieyasu's political abilities allowed him to manage successfully through the uncertainty of the period. He kept cordial relations with Nobunaga and formed an alliance with him, recognizing the strength of the new ally and the importance of maintaining regional stability. Ieyasu also used the moment to bolster his military forces and secure strategic alliances, putting himself in a prominent position that would shape Japan's future. As Nobunaga emerged as a central figure in Owari, Ieyasu began his own journey, paving the way to become one of Japan's three great unifiers.